Good morning. Hope you're doing good. I'm back with another video, another thought. And this morning I'm going to be talking about I'm going to be talking in context with what I'm going to start showing you as promised. We're going to go through the Bible, as I said in the past video. But now I want to show you something very interesting. Okay, in the last video I said that Black people, God was with us through slavery. God was with us through apartheid. God was with us through the Jim Crow laws, as difficult as it was, and other places around the world where Black people were oppressed and violated. And I said that God does it because He wants to crush us so that we will yield only the best product. What does it mean? Does it mean God hates us? No. We said, remember the people of Israel, of which there are many among Black people, we are like grapes or olives. When you crush a grape, you get wine. When you crush an olive, you get supreme olive oil. If you cold press it, some might say. But that's the idea. God crushes us so that we become, or we yield the best trust, the best faith in Him. And of course, our forefathers had walked away from God, and troubles and heartache should bring us back to God. I suppose that's why Negro spirituals were written, because Black people were going through a hard time and they had to remember who they were. And those Negro spirituals, if you listen to the words, they are not Christian words. They're based on the Torah, the Tanakh. That's that Israelite flavor that I'm talking about among us Black people all over the world. Alrighty. I'm going to have to show you what I'm talking about today. Let me start sharing. We're going to read Psalm 14 together. And the reason why we are going to read Psalm 14 together is because I want to show you what our lives have been, what our approach as Black people over the millennia has been, and why it is important for us now, more than ever, to associate ourselves with God's business and not the business of the world. Alrighty, let's try again. Let me try and share. And there's the window that I isolated. That's good. All right, so there's a window that I've isolated from the book of Psalms, and I am going to be reading from the Hebrew Bible because the Christian Bible is a translation. You cannot learn the Bible from a translation. You have to learn it in Hebrew. That's the only way to know exactly what it says. In future videos, in the distant future, when we talk about doctrines and creeds, you're going to see why it's important to read everything in Hebrew. By the way, reminder, my name is Zuko, and I am a student of religion. That's what I've been studying for the past 5 years. And that is my lifetime study, I guess. All right. Psalm chapter 14 is an interesting chapter. In the Christian Bible, it says, the fool in his heart says there is no God. That's what it says in the Christian Bible. In the Hebrew, it says, for the leader of David, the benighted man thinks God does not care. Men's deeds are corrupt and loathsome. No one does good. This God doesn't care is a specific translation that's been given to give a specific message. But when we read the text, it says, Ein Elohim here. Ein Elohim, a man says in his heart, there is no God. That's what it says in Hebrew. But the meaning of it is not a question of belief. In the last video, I said that the Western approach to the scriptures, to the Hebrew Bible, or to God, the Western approach to God is to prove if God exists or not. And the Western approach is irrelevant in relation to the Bible because God says, get to know me. God doesn't say, believe in me. He says, come and get to know me. And once you know God, you will know how to live. You see? Because as a creature, you owe it to God to acknowledge him as a creator. So you must get to know him. And the problem of humanity is what we see from Genesis 11 in the Bible is humanity strives to forget God and to replace him with idolatry, other gods, in other words. Chapter 14, we find an interesting story. So let me read the whole thing in English here. For the leader of David, the benighted man thinks God does not care. Man's deeds are corrupt and loathsome. No one does good. The Lord looks down from heaven on mankind to find a man of understanding, a man mindful of God. All have turned bad, altogether foul. There's none who does good, not even one. Are they so witless, all those evildoers who devour my people as they devour food, and do not invoke the Lord? They will be seized with fright, for God is present in the circle of the righteous. You may set at naught the counsel of the lowly, but the Lord is his refuge. Oh, that the deliverance of Israel might come from Zion, when God restores the fortunes of his people. Yaakov will exult, Israel will rejoice. What's going on in Psalm 14? In Psalm 14, King David, or David, is prophesying about the Jewish people or the Israelites being exiled in the land of Babylon. Specifically, King David is prophesying about a king named Nebuchadnezzar, not Nimrod, Nebuchadnezzar. King David is prophesying about Nebuchadnezzar. If you read the story of the Babylonian captive, you get captivity, you find that Nebuchadnezzar is so proud in his heart that he does not acknowledge God. He does not care to know God. Nebuchadnezzar, who was a Babylonian king, did not care to know God. And this was not a coincidence because Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, Babylon, is built upon Nimrod's kingdom. Nimrod, you remember Nimrod, the black man, son of Ham? Black man who decided to forget God after some time, establish his own city of Shinar in the valley of Shinar, and that became the Tower of Babel or Babylon. So Nebuchadnezzar is continuing this Babylonian legacy. Nimrod decided not to acknowledge God, he decided to forget God. But what was the sin of black people, as I mentioned in the previous video? Our sin is to trust in ourselves, in our own strength. God allowed slavery, oppression, and all sorts of horrible things so that we do not become self-reliant, but we trust in God. The Bible does not know faith. The Bible doesn't know what faith is. Even though in English it's translated as faith, the Bible knows trust. The word in Hebrew is emunah. Emunah is trust. God says, get to know me, know my ways, which is the law, and then trust me. That's what God is saying. So Nebuchadnezzar did not want to know God, did not want to recall or remember God, let alone trust him. That attitude is what black people were in history. And if you read world history, black people came up with technology, civilization, writing systems, science, mathematics. They came up with a lot of things by God's grace, but they decided to forget God and to trust their own knowledge. Hence, we went through the hell that we've been going through because we are so quick to trust ourselves. So King David here is talking about Nebuchadnezzar, who is not a black man by this time, probably who is probably a brown person. I'd say he was a brown person, not so much a black man, because Nimrod, that was his kingdom, the first one. So anyway, skin color doesn't matter, but I'm trying to give you, actually it does because of the context. but I'm trying to give you a picture of what's going on. So Nebuchadnezzar would what would he do? He would come and invade, take these people into captivity for 70 years in Babylon. And during that time, God humbles him because he believes in himself. He is so sufficient and self-aware that God decides that he wants to humble this man. So you know the story. God strips him of all decency. He gives him insanity, sends him out into the field, and the king starts eating grass like cows until he acknowledges that Yah exists, that God exists. And then he gets some reprieve. And that's the story of Black people. Until we acknowledge that Yah lives and is among us and not distant, then our fortunes are going to change first in this world, and of course, as we inherit the world to come. I mentioned in the previous video that Black people, when we get educated, we tend to become agnostic. We tend to look at what the church did to us, and we say, I don't want anything to do with God. And we forget that the church was using God's word in order to reach its ambition of world conquest. They changed everything, perverted everything in order to make sure the whole world is enslaved in a system using religion, using God's word. So be mad at the church if you want to, but don't be mad at the Bible. Come to the Hebrew side of things to learn exactly what the Bible is saying about you as a Black person. So that's basically it. Our sin has been self-reliance, self-belief, and pride. And often we have been humbled. The Lord looks down from heaven on mankind to find a man of understanding, a man mindful of God. So once again, God is not just sitting there looking for people to punish. God is looking for people who will remember who he is and his existence and walk humbly before God. If I don't know what, well, actually, not that I don't know, pre-Atlantic slavery history tells us, or we get an idea that in Africa, Africans was enslaving other Africans. Africans were ill-treating other African people. So selling people to slavery was just the crowning works of the attitude of Africans. So there was definitely violence in the African continent. There was a spilling of blood. There was there was kidnapping. There was selling of people. And then transatlantic slavery came about. And of course, there was idolatry, lots of idolatry. And then if we look at uh, pre-apartheid South Africa, for example, in this country, in South Africa, we are given this idea that before colonization and before apartheid, that this was a peaceful country. It's only the Europeans that brought violence. This is not true. When the Europeans came to this part of the world, we were killing each other. Black people, tribe against tribe, people group against people group. People were stealing each other's daughters. They were stealing each other's livestock. They were burning each other's houses. There was a lot of blood. There was no reason for war. People were looking for war and reasons to spill blood. That's what was happening in Southern Africa. And then God allowed for the Europeans to come and oppress the people and to bring them the law. Today, in a free South Africa, we have no law, we have no order, but we have freedom. And if you're looking at the trend in South Africa, we are going back to those pre-colonial days where there is violence, where Black people are robbing Black people, killing other Black people, raping Black women. The same violence that was here before oppression is here today. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that oppression is good. I'm saying when the Black person forgets God, does idolatry, turns to murder, to blood, to spilling blood, when he trusts in himself and does not trust in God, God brings about the enemy, and the enemy oppresses. All right? And don't misinterpret what I'm saying either. Black people or white people are not the enemies of Black people. The enemy of mankind is the heart, right? The heart is the enemy of mankind. For example, we've been oppressed by Europeans, but it doesn't mean we should go around and hating white people. It's futile. Why do you go around hating white people? Instead, you should move towards God and say, God, I've been mistreated. You must avenge for me. I cannot avenge for myself. Because the whole point of going through hell as Black people is to refine our characters and our spirituality. Those are the two reasons of oppression. Because we like grapes, we are like olives, we must be crushed, we must yield olive oil, and we must yield the best wine. But if we fail to become anything elevated than what we were, then we have missed the point and we have failed altogether. The verse says, all have turned bad, altogether foul, there's none who does good. So not even one. So the condition is not skin color. Skin color is not the oppressor. The oppressor is the condition of the heart, because every man has become evil. And it says, are they so witless, all those evildoers who devour my people? This is now referring to the Babylonians that have devoured, so to speak, devoured the Jewish people and have taken them to captivity and have treated them in captivity very badly. God says, these evildoers who devour my people as they devour food and do not invoke the Lord. Can you see the pattern here? God wants human beings to invoke his name and to remember him and to trust him and to do his bidding, because he created us. We are not free agents. If you subscribe to the theory, the idea of evolution, then you are just a monkey with no origins. You're a monkey without law. And what will monkeys do? Monkeys will go around raping and selling people and making war and stealing other people's food, etc., etc. And they will be seized with fright, for God is present in the circle of the righteous. So God was present among the Jewish people. The Jewish people believe that God is with us in Galut. What does it mean, Galut? It means in exile. Jewish people are scattered all over the world, but God is with us. Now, when I say Jewish people, I don't mean from the tribe of Judah. I mean everyone who's descended from any of the 12 tribes of Israel. You may set at naught the counsel of the lowly, but God, the Lord, is his refuge. What does it mean the Lord is his refuge? Is because God looks at Israel as a nation, but also as a man, as Jacob, because God had a relationship with Jacob, and he named his people after Jacob. And God said to Jacob, you'll be called Israel now. That's the name that I'm giving you. Or Israel, which means the people of God. So when David uses the personal pronoun masculine, his refuge, singular masculine, his refuge, it means his is Israel, the man or the nation. So God is with the Jewish people, or was with the Jewish people in the Babylonian exile. In the case of King David, he was prophesying. So he's prophesying that God will be with the people of Israel wherever they go. And remember, I told you that in Africa, there is a large number of the descendants of Israel. In fact, about 5 tribes of the 12 of Israel are represented in Africa. And those people groups who were not part of Israel, they became part of Israel because Moses, our great teacher, when he ran away from Egypt after killing an Egyptian, he ran to the land of Cush, around about the region of Midian, and he became the king over the African people. And you must remember, I said to you yesterday that, sorry, not yesterday, well, yesterday in the other video, that Africa actually begins in the border of Lebanon and the border of Persia. Iraq itself is part of Africa. The Middle East, what's called the Middle East today, is Northeast Africa, because Ethiopia, the great African kingdom, was actually all the 4 sons of Ham, who are African. They occupied all this territory, the Canaanites, the Ethiopians, Canaanites and Ethiopians lived side by side in the land that's called Israel today, and all the way to Shinar, to Iraq, all the way to the border with Persia, all the way down to Saudi Arabia and down to the Horn of Africa, as far south as Mozambique. That was Ethiopia. Okay. And then, of course, to the west of the Kushite kingdom, or Ethiopia, you had Mitzrayim, which is Egypt, and Libya as well. So three brothers on this continent, two brothers on the continent that was cut in half or cut away by the Suez Canal when the Westerners created the Suez Canal and created the maps that we see today. And of course, I use the terms African and Westerners because I intentionally want to make a distinction so that you may understand the world, the African world, the biblical world, and the Western world. You must make these distinctions, not because of hatred, but because of education, for the sake of education. So God is with the Israelite people. When the Jews came back, when the Jews were taken to Babylon, they were there 70 years. But only 50,000 of them went back to the land of Israel with Mordecai, Nehemiah, and Ezra. And then the Jewish people reunited with the ones that were left behind. And then fast forward to the time of Titus in 70 CE, Titus the Roman besieges Jerusalem, destroys the temple, takes the Jewish people into captivity in Rome, or to Rome in captivity. And now the Jewish people are scattered all over the world. Actually, even before Titus, at least 1,000 years before the birth of the Christ. Jewish people have been living in Ethiopia and Spain for at least 1,000 years before that. Now you have Jewish people established in Spain, you have Jewish people established all over Europe. The Israelites are scattered all over Africa, all over the Eastern world, as far as Pakistan and beyond. But as far as my personal study of where the Israelite people are, I've been able to go as far as Pakistan, the northern parts of Pakistan in the mountains. And just to mention one Israelite tribe in Pakistan, the Afridi. The Afridi, have you ever seen Pakistani people with the surname Afridi? Those are Israelites. And then, of course, there's many more up in the mountains and the borders with Afghanistan. And then, of course, the Afghans themselves are Israelite tribes. So, wherever the Israelites are, God is there. Israelites sold to slavery by other Africans, mainly because they were Israelites too. Because you must remember, other Africans did not like the Israelite black people. Because the Israelite black people, when they came from Syria and Babylon and they moved south into Africa, they became African kings. Israelites became royalty when they got here. And the native peoples became the agriculturalists. Okay, so all the civil matters, governance, those were Jews and Israelites, black Jews and Israelites, setting up those kingdoms, and the local people that they coexisted with did the herding of animals and the agricultural bits. So they were more than happy to sell black Israelites to slavery because they know in their own oral tradition that these black people are not natives of Africa. Or Southern Africa or even Central Africa, they come from the north. As I told you in the other video, my people come from Yemen, from Azania, Yemen. That's the same country. So wherever we go, God is with us. Black people taken to the Americas, God is with us. God was with us through all the slavery, through all the pain, the rape, the torture, Europeans breeding our people as cattle and dogs are bred. In all those difficulties, God was there suffering together with us. God was there suffering together with us. So what about, it's easy to talk about it now because there's no slavery and black people in the Americas are free, so to speak. How does it help the people who were killed, the black people who were killed, and the generations that suffered immensely under slavery? Well, none of us are with us anymore. They're all dead. But I want to tell you something. They have all obtained access to the world to come. They have all attained access to the world to come. And the generation of Black people in the Americas, especially, that exists today in the Caribbean and North America, they have the responsibility to prosper, to be rich and successful, because the tears of their forefathers cannot go in vain. To prove that God is with the Black people are beginning to prosper all over the world. Yes, there are difficulties, and the system, the secret architecture of the world, the grand architecture of the world does not easily let us succeed, but we must succeed in this world and in the world to come. But we cannot do that if we do not remember who God is, if we do not come close to God, know what his ways are, and do his bidding. Unless our hearts still trust in ourselves, we will not make it. We will never see the fruits. There will never be justification for this enslavery of our ancestors. Their tears would have been in vain. Yes, they will see the world to come, but they will cry because their generations did not come back to the Almighty, did not come back to Yah. So if you're Black and you are leaving the church, please do not become agnostic. You must seek God, get to know him. Must remember, you're not forced to believe in God. You must seek God, know him. When you know God, you will find emunah, which is trust. When you find emunah, you will find his infinite blessings and justification for all the things that we have been through. Oh, that the deliverance of Israel might come from Zion when the Lord restores the fortunes of his people. Yaakov will exult, Israel will rejoice. As the Jewish people are constantly being restored in this world for the suffering that they are going through, the Israelite people are also due for the same restoration because we are one people, one nation. Black people all over the world, we must come back to the knowledge of God so that in this world, the Lord may restore our fortunes, heal those sores of slavery, apartheid, Jim Crow laws, colonization, and the ongoing systematic racism that stops us from achieving our financial goals and achieving and reaching our dreams because we are Black. It's not possible. If you're Black and you prosper, you've got two choices. One, you can join the grand architecture of the world, the secret places, and become rich, or you can come back and remember God. Your heart must turn. Must remember everything that's wrong with Black people is in the heart, because we tend to trust ourselves and our own strength. In South Africa, during the apartheid times, when we were fighting apartheid, that generation said, Amandla ngawethu, which means the power is ours. That was a big mistake. That was a big, big mistake. We should have said, Amandla ngakaThixo, which means the power belongs to God. And that's the turning of the heart. When our hearts turn as Black people, we will see the biggest restoration from Buenos Aires right down to Calgary, up in Canada. We'll see Black people prosper in this world and also in Africa. We will get rid of these African problems if we come back to remember who God is, if our hearts turn. All right, hope you learned something from this. And I guess I will see you in the next video. And I'd like for you to do me a favor. My channel is new. Please click like for this video and also subscribe. There is dozens of videos to come. We're going to go through the whole Bible. This video is designed to let you know the secret towards your success. But now I'm going to reveal to you God's world so that as a Black person, you can find yourself, prosper, and do justice to the injustice that was dealt our forefathers. God bless you and keep you.